Thank you all for joining our Protecting Your Brand Online webcast today. I'm Brian Beck. I'm your co-host with Enceiba. We'll introduce ourselves in just a moment. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Folks, this webinar is being recorded, so anyone who registered will have a copy of the webinar after we do it. That'll be provided to you via email. If you have questions, please go ahead and post those in the Q&A box. We'll do our best to answer those as they come in during the course of our webinar. We have a lot to cover today, so excited and see some familiar faces here joining us as well. So thank you all for joining us for this very important topic. My name, as I mentioned, is Brian Beck. I'm the managing partner and co-founder of a company called Enceiba. We help companies with their Amazon strategies, in particular their go-to-market as well as their execution of their programs. We focus on branded manufacturers mainly. I come from a career 25 years in e-commerce. Just means I've been around for a while. Ran e-commerce at a number of companies, including Harbor Freight Tools and others. I also founded a thought leadership series called Master B2B and published a book called $1 Billion B2B E-commerce. That's me. My co-host today is Andrew Schydlowsky. Did I say it right, Andrew? Did I do it right? Oh, you're on mute, so we can't hear you. I don't know if I said it right.
Well done, Brian. You passed.
Thank you. Excellent. So you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Andrew, to the crew here?
Absolutely. And Brian, just got to say, very impressive how that rolled off your tongue. So, but
Thanks.
I'm a serial entrepreneur. Started my career with my own brand, selling direct to consumer and e-commerce in 2000. I'm sorry, no, it wasn't. It was 1997.
Yep.
So my career spanned everything from my own brands to big retail, owning retail and distribution. I'm very passionate about building brands and leveraging the internet to drive growth and sustainability. Um, Love building and love seeing that spark in all of your eyes. You understand what's possible.
Awesome. What does TrackStreet do, Andrew?
So TrackStreet is all about optimizing your channels. We want to ensure that you're selling more product through the right channels and the right partners and creating tremendous customer experiences and all of it at the right price. We want to remove friction in the buying experience so all these channels work harmoniously together and drive more dollars into the right pockets.
And our firms have been working together, folks, for a number of years now on channel management, channel strategy, channel control issues. So Andrew has an enormous amount of experience in this, what we're going to talk about today, which is protecting your brand online. So very fortunate, Andrew. Thank you for joining us for this. So I'm going to go ahead and get us kicked off. Here's what we're going to cover today. E-commerce, today the opportunity, and today's digitized buyer. Why is this all happening to us? Losing control. How does it happen? And what are the results? So, what are some of the pain points that result when companies don't have control of their e-commerce and digital channels? How do we address the underlying issues, best practices and tools? And again, we'll answer questions as we go through this. We are going to cover a lot. Some of you may have heard some of these similar topics in the past if you've participated in some of our prior webcasts together. But we've got some new stuff here as well, so we'll be sharing quite a bit, and we're jam-packed. So again, it's recorded, so don't lose. You can always go back and listen, so don't have to take furious notes. So first and foremost, e-commerce as a selling channel continues to grow. U.S. e-commerce retail sales are projected to hit $1.7 trillion by the end of 2027. And it's a significant portion now of retail sales in the United States. These are U.S. numbers, but just like on the consumer side, the B2B side of e-commerce has also grown rather dramatically. Here's some projections also from eMarketer that talk about the growth here. And what's fascinating here, Andrew, about this too is, I've talked about this. This is bigger than retail, right? 2.4 trillion projected sales next year. It's considerably bigger than the B2C e-commerce, which is estimated at 1.5 trillion. So this channel control and brand management covers both B2B and B2C angles, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And what's driving a lot of this is the new buyer. 58% of U.S. millennials make most of their purchases online versus in store. Most of their purchases, in other words, they're buying more online than they are offline. 62% start their journey by browsing online, compared to 38% who begin in store, and almost 80% read online reviews, regardless of channel. What is this all saying? It's saying that the influence of digital is pervasive across B2B and B2C buying journeys, and as a result, maintaining a controlled brand presence on channels like marketplaces, and we'll talk about Amazon, but we'll talk about others today as well, is really critical. Millennials are also now 75% of the digital workforce and increasingly moving into B2B roles. That means that this buying sort of spillover and influence from digital is happening just as much in B2B side, the B2B side, as it is B2C. So it crosses all channels here, Andrew, and this is why we get such a great audience for this, is because it's an acute issue for branded manufacturers, and that's a lot of who's on the call today are folks who have brands and are trying to manage this. So why don't you tell us a little bit, Andrew, about we talk about the marketplace landscape. What does it look like?
Yeah, so Brian, we know that e-commerce is changing very quickly. It's very dynamic, and there's absolutely a trend of marketplaces taking more and more share of commerce. And what we're seeing here, by far and away, Amazon is the
Yep.
leader in terms of gross dollars sold. And you see this kind of tail of other marketplaces, and we'll talk a bit more about the shifts towards marketplace. What's important to note here, though, that depending on what kind of products a brand may sell, they may find that a marketplace like eBay is actually a massive channel for them, perhaps their largest. So it really depends on what you're selling to then go look at where you're selling and what the opportunity is in that channel. But no question, trend towards marketplace commerce. So as we're looking for like what's happening across the marketplaces, Amazon, absolutely 40% of US e-commerce and continuing to grow. And what we're seeing is this increasing share of B2B commerce happening. So what you're seeing is Amazon's share is pretty constant over the last number of years, but the dollars are going up. And we see that trend continuing going forward. So other marketplaces are emerging. And I look at four major buckets of what's happening here. So it's a whole new era of digital commerce. So we've got legacy marketplaces like eBay. They're evolving and there's renewed momentum. I mentioned earlier, depending on what you're selling, eBay may be a massive channel for you that you don't really know is there. So renewed momentum in eBay. Last Q3 2025, there's 13% year-over-year growth in terms of gross market value in certain categories, growing quite quickly. And there's just what I call the miracleization of e-commerce. For those who aren't familiar with Miracle, they're essentially a software platform devoted at making retail websites into marketplaces. And they're growing rapidly. We'll talk a bit more about that later as well. Social commerce, absolutely trending. And so many of you are familiar with TikTok. There's also all these derivatives. There's Instagram, there's whatnot. There's a whole slew of platforms built to connect consumer to product. Now, we're expecting about 8.8% of total commerce, total e-commerce by end of year 2025 to go through social commerce. It's about $115 billion. And then lastly, AI is everywhere right now, and it's really the next frontier. But the whole concept of agentic commerce may change everything as it continues to develop. But it really shifts how consumers encounter products, are educated around the product, and then how a transaction actually happens, moving from very out in the open to negotiation between bots and then a package showing up at someone's doorstep. Lots of changes happening.
What's fascinating, if I could weigh in on that, Andrew, too, is on the AI side. I mean, Amazon itself has embraced that enormously. In fact, I was at the conference, Reshape conference recently at Amazon up in Seattle, and they talked about the extension of their search capabilities, Rufus, which is their AI search engine, to the B2B sector. So this is happening everywhere, and of course, Amazon being the big monster in the room here too is also really embracing AI. But what's fascinating is all these channels really are opening up, and it's really changing the face of commerce. So it's interesting stuff.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
And Brian, I'll add to that.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
Shopify's made a partnership with OpenAI. Last
Hmm.
week, Amazon was in the news for wanting to block
That's
OpenAI's
right.
ability and ChatGPT's
Yep.
ability to go shop.
Yep.
Amazon doesn't want to give up their search positioning. So there's a lot of wrestling happening. But what we do know is how they find product and where transactions happen is going to be shifting over the next several years pretty
Ab-
rapidly.
Absolutely. This stuff motivates resellers, right? This is some fascinating stuff.
It sure does. And we're going to talk a lot about where these transactions happen and who's actually selling them. But really, over 60% of units sold on Amazon in Q1 25, third party. And that's currently at a high historic. Now, who are these resellers? We'll talk more about it, but it's really easy. to start selling on Amazon and other marketplaces. Depends which marketplace, easier or harder. But about half of Amazon sellers in the US are based in Hong Kong or mainland China.
Hmm.
And over half of the top Amazon sellers, we'll talk about how many of them there actually really are Chinese. So every other marketplace is a bit different. Best
Hmm.
Buy is actually quite restricted. They moved to a marketplace model. They have about 500 vetted sellers. eBay has about 6 million US sellers. What's
Wow.
interesting is about 80% of those are small businesses, Brian. So people think of eBay as much
Yeah.
people selling things out of their garage, but what we're
Right.
finding is actually professional organizations selling product, which will also factor in some of what we're going to talk about later, but
Yep.
having to do with control of distribution channel and where product ends up.
So go a little deeper on who those resellers are.
Yeah, so let's take a look. So historically, let's look at Amazon. About 2.5 million registered sellers historically, but only about 600, 700,000 of them are actually active in a meaningful way. So, are they even generating sales? Only about 200,000 of them made at least one sale a month.
Hmm.
Um, it's actually not that many. 50, 70,000 are highly active, regular sales every week, but it's 10,000 sellers that really matter. Half of Amazon's gross market value it's of sales. Like it's actually not that many. Who
Hmm.
are they on Amazon and other places? Like it's the factories themselves. We've seen the commerce go direct to the consumer. It's really disrupting what brands are. Chinese OEM sellers. So it's not just dupes, it's actually their own product. It's professional sellers. We just talked about how 80% of sellers on eBay are actually businesses. Here
Yep.
they are. It's these big aggregator backed brands. Right? It's lots of PE dollars behind companies. It's
Hmm.
some big third party power sellers. And it's brands going to a combination of Amazon 1P, 3P, for example, picking and matching SKUs to different distribution models. Um, Now, this also extends Best Buy, more of
Hmm.
a vetted professional group. Home Depot is estimated about 10,000 3P suppliers, but it's not publicly published how many there are. Again, it can be more professional. But the trend is not towards these little people running around doing weird things. It's actually professional people and
Interesting.
businesses showing up in these marketplaces and moving product.
And why are they there?
It's a great question, Brian. It's easy. Like there's
Right.
low startup costs, right? You get access to all these people who want to buy stuff.
Right.
I mean, you don't need lots of infrastructure. You just need to get hold of product, right? And so it's like it's quick, it's easy to go where the people are. And this whole concept isn't just Amazon. It's really explained to other marketplaces. And that's again, we'll go into what we're going to talk about why distribution control matters.
Exactly. Right. And the other thing is, people can work from anywhere while they're doing this. I mean, it's fascinating and it opens up new channels of revenue to other types of business. So when we look at how they get the product, this is really interesting. What are you guys finding here?
Yeah. So the bottom line is that when you get an order, it may not be what it appears to be. Everybody gets a high five, get $100,000 order. Sweet, we got this thing in. But that order may get split up and show up in all sorts of places. And
Yeah.
so it is not always what it seems. And so there's lots of ways resellers get product. They're crafty and shifty. And I'll tell you, in my background, I played every game. I delivered a lot of value in my sales process to the brands I worked with, and I was a top five buyer and seller for many brands in my space.
Hmm.
And I developed sales and customers for them. However, I also played a lot of games as I was trying to teach them how to use the internet. And one example for any of the brands in this room who offer discounted pricing for certain markets out of the country with different price points, maybe different economic solutions or systems, right? You say, hey, 30% off, 40% off for maybe a small Latin American company. I'll tell you a very quick story. I understood how this was working. I created a company in another country that didn't really exist. It kind of did. I had a .pe. For those of you who don't know, that's a Peruvian domain name.
Really?
I
Uh-huh.
sure did. And I had something called Toomey. So my company called Toomey would
Uh-huh.
go and source product from US companies. They would write emails that weren't great English, but not bad English.
That's
And they would
crazy.
do all sorts of buying, get massive discounts, and product, frankly, would never leave the city they got picked up in. So
Oh,
absolutely diversion, playing lots of games, and these were some brands that I was not trying to build the market on. I was simply making some dollars and keeping my monkeys or swinging around the warehouse going. And so there's a lot of games. Just know that the market you're selling into is quite sophisticated and crafty. They will find the holes in your strategy.
So this is the reason you started this TrackStreet business. I mean, you're the fox in the hen house, right? I mean, you're on the other side. You know the tricks.
There's no question. I played the game. Who do you
Yeah,
want to hire to
yeah.
secure your house? It's the guy that used to break in. And I'll tell you,
Right. That's
I've
right.
also received all the communication, including cease and desist, and I know what stopped and scared me. And
Okay.
so there's definitely a method to the madness, and I've been on all sides of this.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So it's fascinating to me. There's even stolen goods showing up on these channels, right?
There's no question. So if you look at this quote, one SoCal woman allegedly netted $8 million by selling shoplifted cosmetics on Amazon as organized retail theft operations become more ruthlessly organized. So first of all, what happens offline goes online, Brian, right? It's
Right.
it's not isolated. And when it's online, impacts offline. This is an ecosystem. And
Hmm.
many of us may have heard about the shifting laws in California regarding retail theft. You can basically fill your arms with product, run out, and aren't really going to be prosecuted for this. I mean, where do those products go? I'll tell you, it's pretty easy to go throw them online, right? And that's,
Yeah.
it's everything with swap meets the online market. They show up everywhere. And the lack of product and channel control, like strategy and enforcement, are absolutely being exploited by sophisticated reseller networks. I mean, $8 million, like that's not a couple bucks. I mean, that's real
No,
dollars.
it's crazy. It's crazy. It's not just Amazon either.
No, right? This is again moving towards e-commerce exploding, and it's everything's turning into a marketplace. Right? As they grow up, everybody wants to be a marketplace. So, what's shifting? Where are people expanding into? Shopify, it's Walmart. Look at eBay. A lot of people don't really talk about eBay. It's coming up. Etsy, TikTok Shop. There's that social commerce boom. Depending on what you're selling, people are
Yeah.
moving that direction. So there's other marketplaces about evolving, right? As people are growing up. Ulta for beauty, turning into a marketplace. Home Depot, Best Buy, Kroger. Like, so
Hmm.
we talked about the miracleization of e-commerce. So this platform devoted at helping people grow into being marketplaces, they had about 52 marketplace launches in 2024 and 2025, about
Wow.
340 clients, and they're building a whole ecosystem for Shopify. They have something like 30% year-over-year growth in gross market value, but that's going to really increase. And these are people who used to go one banner to a customer, they sold what they inventoried, and that's rapidly shifting. This infinite shelf concept that's been around for a while is now really starting to happen. So
This is
depending on your
fascinating.
category, Brian,
Hmm.
like
Yep.
some channels may be a really big deal for you.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. In fact, next time around, Andrew, let's grab somebody from Miracle to join us because I'm curious of their perspective. But this is really interesting. And one of the things, of course, that results from this for a brand like everyone we have on the phone here or on the call here is that they may or may not know who all these resellers are. Often we talk to brands that have no idea. When we talk about Amazon, they may have hundreds of these resellers. So we wanted to start by asking a question of everyone here. If you could just go on to, you should be able to see on your poll there. Do you know who your Amazon resellers are? If you're a brand manufacturer, do you know who the majority of the sellers are that offer your products on Amazon? I'm curious because we did some research on this, Andrew, a couple of years ago, and we found, I'll show you the results in a moment, found some interesting stuff about, whether or not people know who those resellers are. The majority of them are. So I'm curious in our audience today, go ahead and place your votes, guys, in terms of what you're seeing. I'll give you another 15, 20 seconds to do that. We've got not everybody, most people are voted here. Let's see. Keep going, keep going. Come on, hit the
Brian, I'll
button.
say whatever their answer is, they're certainly not going to be alone. I think the answers here will surprise everyone.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, we'll give it another 5 seconds and then I'll share the poll. Okay, you guys have all cast your votes, so thank you for that. Let me share the results. So here's what's interesting. It's you all said 63% said the majority, which is actually higher than I thought would know.
Yeah.
37% said no. And so when we asked, it's hey, JP, we'll look at just throw a question in, JP, if you would. I just got a hand up from you. And we'll throw it into the chat. JP will answer it there. But let's go ahead and share what we found in our research, which was that in fact 69% said they know who that there are resellers selling their products, but 70%, over 70% said they don't know who those resellers are, at least the majority of them. So Interesting that in our group today, you have a pretty good sense, which might mean, Andrew, we have a lot of TrackStreet customers on the line because that's what you guys do is you help them understand that. Many of you probably don't. So here's what happens with this scenario, and I picked out Milwaukee here as a brand. They're not on the phone today, I don't think, but it's one that I call them out because they don't answer my phone calls. The Sorry, Milwaukee, but you have no channel control. They have 50, 60, 70 resellers on their listings. This is an example of a high selling product tool, very prominent brand. And what happens is the opportunistic retailers, they compete on price. They have no other way to differentiate. And it drives brands pricing into the toilet, right? And not only, and there's other issues as well, we'll highlight in a moment, but at the end of the day, when you have uncontrolled resellers, you have no real control over your retail price point, which erodes the brand value of your brand in the marketplace. Now, again, I'm kind of picking on Milwaukee a little bit here. We love your products, but you just return our phone calls. Good Guys Holdings, Oriental Fuchsia Shop, Best for Buck, Digital Solutions by HM. These are the companies representing this very prominent brand on Amazon. It's just one instance, right? And what happens is, a lot of these resellers will use, repricing software to monitor prices that are set in these marketplace channels. And frankly, they'll continue to drop. One seller will move, seller A moves, seller B moves, and they respond to each other. And what you see here is a ratcheting down over time. This is over the course of about 20 minutes, by the way. This graph shows how quickly a price gets changed, and these repricing tools will actually dynamically change the prices on marketplaces, and this is what happens, and they're racing against each other. And so, to capture the sale, because again, the differentiation of these resellers is often nothing more than price. They're not well established, sort of value added resellers or distributors or retailers. These are companies that are simply operating on your lack of control. So it can be a real race to the bottom, and it's costly to brands. So price undercutting, margin erosion, low prices showing up can cause other channels to reduce their purchases and their brand commitments. I don't know how many of you on the line here today have, your sales team is saying, I just went to sell this new product line to a retailer or a distributor, and they'll go right to Amazon and see the price being offered there is being below what I'm offering them at wholesale. What the heck? I can't make any margin on this. Inconsistent customer experience and brand perception. Often retailers or resellers, excuse me, who are uncontrolled will list products. They'll create duplicate listings on Amazon. They will put up erroneous information. In some cases, they're trying to game the system. Andrew, and your your Peruvian company. I mean, all kinds of tricks that these companies use. This erodes consumer confidence, negative brand perception. You've got issues where companies order products and they get something that may not even be the authentic product. And then finally, internal costs. So we've seen this time and time again where there's a fear of this channel conflict, this sort of big thing called e-commerce that scares everyone. So internally, particularly our more traditional brand manufacturers are afraid to do anything in e-commerce. They're afraid to embrace this. They're afraid to really understand it and take some action on it. They just want to kind of close their ears. And so, this is unfortunately happening in a lot of cases at the C-suite. And so understanding this is really the first step, and that's what we're going to give you the tools to deal with it. And so, Andrew, how does this all happen? All these problems, and where does it come from?
So, right, I'm going to start with this. I don't know how many people in this room have children, or particularly small children, but how they always test limits. It's a continual process. I've got a 3.5-year-old.
There you go.
Resellers are not that different. Our job as brand owners, right, as partners, is to create clear expectations, consistency. We are going to keep them and train them over time. And
Right.
so this all happens because you're missing pieces and consistency in your process. So lack of foundational agreements to set expectations. There aren't controls in place to know when things are going wrong, why. There's lack of alignment internally. And so you get someone making a sale that is actually going to destroy distribution in many channels at once and cost you
Yeah.
perhaps 10 times the amount of sales down the line. And it's really, you got these little boys and girls running around that are controlling you, not the other way. And it's, in the end, like you kind of throw up your hands in frustration. It's because they haven't set expectations, but it's really like there's no visibility. You're reactive, not proactive. The structure is missing. There, you haven't thought through, or many brands haven't yet, controls on packaging per channel, special markups for certain retailers, differentiation by market. It's too easy for someone to create a dot whatever email address and place an order at a discount for something that's going to go somewhere else in theory, but just shows up at the home market. And it's really about that lack of alignment, Brian, you spoke to. It's through the organization. Oftentimes, it's a willingness to slow down a little bit to have this massive acceleration later of profitable sales
Yeah.
that put dollars in the right pockets across every level of your distribution and partners.
So Andrew, a couple of years ago, I wrote a book called Billion Dollar B2B E-commerce, and we talk about, kind of what I didn't originate it, called confronting the reality of the situation. And I took it from this book, which is Good to Great, Jim Collins. Any of you ever read this book? Many business people have. And one of the key theories or the key sort of positions in the book is that businesses that outperform their peers confront the reality of the situation. Well, what's the reality we're dealing with here? These marketplace channels are doing nothing but growing and emerging and becoming more prominent, more influential. And in order for you to manage your presence, your brand presence, all of you with valued brands, you have to confront the reality of what's going on and take action and resource against it. So buyers' channel preferences have shifted. E-commerce has become a channel of choice and an influence channel. And it can be counterintuitive, but a directly managed channel helps to reduce channel conflict. This isn't about closing your ears to this and closing your eyes. It's about opening your eyes and understanding that you as a brand have a right to take control of this, which includes things like retail pricing control, limiting selling to approved resellers, managing your product offerings, accurate product information, helping prevent fraudulent sellers. Distributors and retailers then have one place to go, where you actually have some control now. If you follow some of these best practices we're going to highlight, and we believe that a well communicated policy is really building on what Andrew just said, can eliminate this conflict. And the approach can vary by your product line, by your brand that you own. Many of our clients, for example, will own multiple brands as a holding company or as a larger, sort of conglomerate. So how do you go about regaining control? We'll call the knights to the rescue here. That's you, Andrew, under the helmet there, Vin Diesel. Uh, I always wanted to present with Vin Diesel. It's awesome. Um, anyway, so folks, one of the misconceptions we get for Amazon in particular is that brand registry will solve the issue of channel control. It does not. Brand registry is a tool that gives you as a brand rights to manage your content and overall brand presence. It's intended to really help brands to manage that as they recognize you are the authority on your brand. Amazon does. And it allows you to, in theory at least, own the brand content product listings, merge duplicate listings, add a storefront, and add A plus content. Excuse me, they call it enhanced brand content. Provide you with a path to monitor for and report on counterfeits, but it does not prevent unwanted resellers. Amazon, remember, guys, all these marketplaces, they are marketplaces. What is market? What is a marketplace? It's a place where people compete to win your sale, you as a customer, your sale on a product. There are multiple sellers on products for a reason on Amazon. Amazon wants to provide the best value and price to their customer. One way they achieve that is by having multiple sellers on a specific product. That does not necessarily work in your favor if they are uncontrolled. They will not, brand registry does not block sellers competing with you or creating competitive offers. It does not guarantee you as the brand are going to win the buy box. The buy box is kind of on Amazon. It's that area where, if on the product page, if you click buy now, you are the default, you're the winner of that. That's called winning the buy box. Amazon brand registry is an important element of channel control because it gives you that content authority, but it does not allow you to remove unwanted sellers. And people can abuse this as well. You have to be careful as a brand. You don't just sort of issue endless complaints to Amazon brand registry. There's a temptation to do that, but then you get your brand registry shut off, right, Andrew? I mean, we've seen that happen.
No question, Brian. So I guess the question to you is, if you start sending in a bunch of counterfeit claims that turn out not to be counterfeit, what happens?
Right. you get deactivated.
Uh,
You can't no longer issue complaints. So yeah,
yeah.
so you have to be really careful about this, particularly as Amazon's ending commingling and other things. You know, we get into the details of that, but it's if you guys have questions on where brand registry starts and stops, Andrew and I will, certainly be available after this or throw in your questions into the Q&A box. Thank you, Sarah, for joining us. I just see she sent us a note. Keep the questions coming, guys. We'll answer them as they come in. So here's really one thing we have to be mindful of here is that we need a foundation of control. This doesn't just start with Amazon brand registry, as I mentioned. You need to have a foundation of control, which includes your intellectual property protection, trademarks, copyrights. Make sure you have those things in place. Distribution agreements. Most of this channel control stuff, guys, happens outside of Amazon and marketplaces. This has to be really how you're managing your overall channel. So having distribution agreements in place, internet selling policies. Some companies are using a minimum advertised price policy, MAP agreements. Your warranty can provide you, or guarantee can provide you with a way to create what's called material differences on products sold by unauthorized resellers. In other words, what you're saying there is if a company, if someone buys a product from an unauthorized seller, you as the manufacturer can say, hey, my warranty doesn't apply. Therefore, it's a different product that's being sold on that marketplace. That gives you some recourse to pursue that seller. You need a process for monitoring, enforcing, and resources are critical. This doesn't happen in a bubble. You need to resource it. You need tools. Andrew's going to describe some amazing things that TrackStreet does to help with this process. We help. There's usually some legal involvement in this as well. Because, it really comes down to your willingness to enforce. You need to understand first who is reselling your products on Amazon. And TrackStreet again is a great resource for this. Andrew, you guys have a database, I think, of millions of these sellers, right? And you saw how many folks. Okay, hey, Tom just asked. Tom Klein, thank you for your question. I'd like to learn more details on effective ways to leverage guarantees to remove sellers. Absolutely. Why don't we take that offline and address that? There's some ways to pursue that, both legally and within Amazon, but you have to be careful with how you do it. Andrew, anything you want to add to what I just said on Tom's question?
No question. There's a lot of nuance to this, and you want to follow a very careful process depending on the marketplace you're targeting.
Yeah. So Tom, let's talk after this. We can give you some more detail on that. Um, Notifications through the sales team. So look, at the end of the day, guys, in general, when we build these programs with our clients, it's about making sure that we are also being relative, fair to the channel in the sense that some of these folks, you've let them sell on Amazon for a long time or other marketplaces. And we want to give them a chance to, for example, sell through. If you know who they are, your sales team has a relationship, though, that's a great channel for you to start the enforcement process, give people time to wind down. But then you can't be afraid to escalate. Email notifications, cease and desist letters to some degree, being careful, brand registry usage, stop selling offenders. You have to be willing to not sell people up to and including things like filing lawsuits as an example to have folks, tell folks that you're serious. Here's the thing. If you aren't willing to enforce, don't even bother starting. You need executive alignment in order to do this because your sales team has to be aligned, as well as your overall go-to-market, marketing, etc. And so this is a multifaceted process here, but again, enforcement being one of the most important things. What else can you do beyond legal means? Well, one thing that we've advised clients, oftentimes in the B2B side, it's two-step distribution, companies getting products from another distributor and then selling them online, selling them on these marketplaces. So working with the master distributor to help you enforce is a good approach. Testing purchases with a chain of custody, in other words, actually purchasing from the marketplace to give you clues on where it's originated. Tracing. There are programs that exist in the marketplace, Amazon Transparency being one of them, that can help with tracing products through the purchase supply chain and purchase cycle. And so really effectively, you're labeling products so you can see them all the way through. That works for some products, doesn't work with others, depending on your distribution. Engaging a private investigator is something some of our clients have done to identify who specific resellers are. And then one of the ways that some of our clients have approached this is by segregating the assortment. So coming out with products that are specific for marketplaces. and then only selling them those products in those marketplaces and segregating the assortment in a way that helps you with this effort. And that's something that some customers obviously have done, but it takes an investment, obviously. So, Andrew, monitoring is really important. You want to talk a little bit about that aspect?
It does, but before we go there, I actually want to go back one step. I think you called something out that's really important about test purchases in your
Yeah.
other approaches. But
Hmm.
something's recently changed with Amazon about how they treat inventory that's coming in. And I think if you could touch on the importance of the move away from commingled inventory, what that means.
Well, sure. I mean, we can talk about. There's multiple aspects of this, but commingled. So, commingled inventory is when companies, sellers put products together into Amazon's FBA system, so that Amazon would mingle products together from various sellers if they could identify that it is this, in fact, the same product. And so Amazon has a system by which they label products when they're coming into their system. And commingling essentially means they would put those products together into the same location and then pick it out of that location. So ultimately, one seller could be selling a product supplied by another seller. What are you seeing, Andrew, in terms of the implications that has?
So look, they're ending this program, right? So in the past, you place a sample order, but you don't really know whose inventory you're getting. So it's
Right.
really easy to slip diverted product, gray market product, fake products,
Yep.
the supply chain. It just gets mixed up on the shelf. Um, but now, as that's shifting and it's in process, I think by spring we'll have it that across all categories. You're going to be able to place an order and actually know where it came from. You can trace it through distribution if you have the other pieces in place. It's not just blended in.
Hmm.
Massive shift, more accountability to Amazon. I think there are lots of reasons they've moved there, and also much more now a brand can do to exert their control over their distribution channels.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's going to be very helpful. We have two questions, Andrew, that came in. Let me just address those real quick. Heather Gosbrink, thank you for your question. How are you? Nice to see you here. She said, is it worth the effort in investing in the channel control policies if you're ultimately getting the sales from resellers? Anyway, right? Essentially is the question. And, usually what we see is that the two things, I mean, one obviously is the control of the price when you're selling it directly on these channels. But also, it's typically higher margin, higher profit, and also higher revenue to the seller. So there's economic reasons and there's also control reasons to that. And then Amanda and Heather, we can talk offline more about this. Amanda Rhodey also asked a question. Have you seen good examples where a lawsuit has been filed against an unauthorized seller? Amanda, thanks for that question. We're going to get to that in a case study we have at the end of this. Yes, we've seen these examples. And Andrew, I'm sure you can share some too, where that's been helpful in really helping the market to understand, meaning the market of resellers, that you're serious because they communicate, guys. They talk to each other on forums. These resellers there's a whole, sort of, and Andrew, you lived in it, right?
I did.
This was your world. Sharing ideas and tips, trips, and tricks of the trade. And hey, is this brand actually serious? So yes, lawsuits can help with that.
Yeah, and I'd like to add one thing, Brian, just to Heather's
Please.
question. I think of the whole sales world as pretty simple. You're either a maker, you make more sales for the brand, you increase the size of the pie, or you're a taker. You're eating food off other people's plates. It's pretty simple. Wrote some articles on this in LinkedIn. But generally, online sellers, particularly resellers and marketplaces, they're just taking. They're not creating more sales for you. They're not educating better customers. They're actually not even doing much except dumping products somewhere that's being shipped for them, right? They're not driving any benefit. When companies put in place good control systems, average selling prices in every channel go up. What
Hmm.
that means is that people you care about, people that care about you, let's talk about languages of love. They tend to believe that margin means you love them. They will feel appreciated, loved, and place bigger, wider orders with you. When they stop feeling loved, they will stop. So more people making more money in the right channels tends to be really good for everything you're doing, right? So yes, super important. Resale on marketplaces is a privilege and a reward for the people that are creating more pie for you to eat everywhere. That's a thank you, not a privilege in my
Vin
mind.
Diesel, or should I say Andrew, man, that is the first time I've ever heard channel control referred to as a love story, but I'll take it, man.
I mean, who here doesn't feel love when they
Right?
get margin, right?
I love it. That's great. Exactly right. Okay. Well, let's talk about how you monitor this stuff. What do you got to do to get control of this practically?
I think there are three key requirements, like in whatever tool you're using. One, you got to get all the policy violations that are critical. Really, it's not just websites. It's not, sorry, it's not just the core marketplaces. It's the websites that matter most. And ideally, it's a tool that can adapt to changes in price in certain products, certain places, and be intelligent. But you need ecosystem view.
Hmm.
And you're able to customize what you're looking at based on your brand, where it's sold, and what matters most to you with rationale. And you need to be able to clearly action the data to do something so that you drive an outcome that matters. That's one. Two, there's got to be automation. Like, you cannot do this
No,
manually. It's just not
no,
possible.
no, it's very
Like,
hard.
I
Yeah.
can't believe how many people we talk to that are these massive brands who have someone who watches college football on Saturday and just looks on the internet, see what's going on. Like, that is not going to work, right? Like, that
Right.
simply doesn't work. There has to be automation. There's a massive amount of data. You need to be actionable. You need to be consistent. Remember, we're talking about little boys and girls. They need consistency. Mommy needs to be watching and yelling out the window in their bed, right? So you got to be able to automate what happens when people aren't behaving and
Right.
put them where they need to go so you can actually have outcomes that matter. And
Yep.
and three, you got to really use this data to drive your key business outcomes and objectives, right? Like, you need to know who people are, really get to them and use the data to drive dollars. Like, this has got to matter. Um, and that's key. Like, it's got to be actionable so your sales team can go make your company more money.
And to the second point, Andrew, earlier on in our life as a business, 8, 9 years ago, we were trying to track this stuff manually. It's impossible. It changes all the time. There are tens of thousands of these resellers, and they change every single day. Guys, if you're trying to do this manually, it's really, really hard. You need a tool like TrackStreet to help you with this because, again, it changes real time and it's going to continue. Even if you have these processes in place, this doesn't go away. People still try to sell your products. You're all big, well-known brands. So so you
Yeah,
need this monitoring, right? You want to take us through this?
we do. And I'll add, Ryan, like, it's not just automate the data collection, it's what you're going to do with it. Who
Right,
cares? We got a bunch of Excel
right,
sheets. Like, it
right,
just doesn't matter.
right.
Like, and what you do with it now will change in 6 months, in a year, because you're going to get better and better at this. And you've got to be able to quickly adjust what your actions are. Like, this has to be automated. Like, don't work in Excel or whatever database system you use. It's just simply unmanageable and impossible. So yeah. So let's talk about what this kind of data, what is strategic monitoring, right? Like you want to be able to use the data to make decisions on what and whom to prioritize. So, like, for example, this is some, we've taken out something out of the TrackStreet system,
Right.
but we're on here on Amazon. We're quantifying buy box ownership and lost sales for a brand or product. We want to know if your goal is to have 90x% of buy box,
Yep.
what are you losing by not having it? Who's taking those dollars from you? How many dollars are they taking, and how many products do they have? And if your goal and objective is to have really control of that market, then great. Let's prioritize the activity of regaining control based on who's having the most impact. You can't just throw a bunch of names on a sheet and start, because you probably aren't picking the right ones to exert your pressure, right? So we want to be strategic, and you want to have process in place and pick the right tool to solve the right problem to get your outcome. So there's strategy in using data to make decisions, not on gut, but truly on data.
Yeah, and you see like you just these example merchant names here, Audio Watt Store, Webtron, Turacell. These are companies in this brand example that are taking share from the brand on this is Amazon or whatever channel this is. Maybe this is a roll up, but yeah, but it's also to your point, Andrew. It's about what you do with it, right? It's the action side of it, and you guys have automated some of the process here, which is helpful.
Yeah, just remember, the people that are selling your products are really sophisticated. Don't let their names on these resale channels fool you. Like, they know
Right,
what they're doing and they're using data. So you need to as well. And so here, for example, what we're showing is merchants with the highest inventory, for example, on Amazon, but this also could be eBay. Like,
right.
how much inventory do they have? If they have a couple of units, they probably don't matter that much. Or you could easily buy those out. Don't start there. Start with the ones having the biggest impact.
Hmm.
So what categories are being affected most? What's the trend in terms of sales value per category, per product, or per seller? And go where the action is, go where the dollars are. And you can then show what you've recovered, and that directly hits bottom line profitability, and it hits P&Ls. And these are the numbers that you then can share across the organization to show the progress you're making. This is real. It has to be actionable, and you got to have a strategy for why you're doing what you're doing.
That's absolutely right. So Andrew, one of the questions is, behind all this, this all takes investment. This all takes resourcing. So I want to throw another poll up here and ask the group, do you have C-level support to do this? It takes work. And, as we talked about, it takes alignment. Do you feel that your C-suite support, you have it, that you need to implement a program like this? Don't worry, we're not sharing this. We're not attributing any of your answers to you or your company. We're just going to share it generally. I'm curious what the group says. Oftentimes, we're finding now more and more, Andrew. I don't know if you're seeing the same thing, but this is going up to the C-suite. The C-suite saying we have to get control of this because it's causing pain throughout the business. It's causing channel conflict. It's making my sales team less effective. It's diluting my brand. It's as much a marketing problem as it is a sales problem. So a real challenge here. So I'll give you guys about another 5 seconds to fill in those, and then we'll share the results of the poll. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so 62% of you said yes, that's great, fantastic. That's kind of a shift from where I've seen it in the past. 38% still though said no. So we still have, some cohort here that feels like they need to continue selling. Obviously, this is not just a simple, hey, we're ready to go and do it. There's always alignment required. What we find is that number one, the sales team alignment is critical because what you find in your sales team is you may have some groups that are selling to, or some departments or individual team members that are selling to a company that's reselling on Amazon. And guess what? They're making a lot of commission on that because, they're selling it on Amazon and they may not be fully on board or excited about eliminating someone who is they're generating a lot of commission on. The brand has to be willing to cease selling to offending resellers, even master distributors, like bigger companies that redistribute. If they're not helping you in this, they're hurting you, right? So there's some hard conversations that have to happen, which again is why alignment is so important. This also gets into global alignment for multinational companies. Andrew, you were talking about, it's kind of how that happens globally. Companies make, products making their way onto Amazon and other marketplaces by way of global distribution. So it does really require this global, this executive will at the top level. Because if you're talking about internal controls, somebody selling products in China from out of your Chinese plant to a reseller there who then sells it on Amazon, that can be a real challenge for you. You need your internal controls in place in order to manage that. So again, confronting the reality. The other thing I like to talk about a little bit briefly is selling approach on Amazon. One of the things when companies take a wholesale selling approach or this vendor central approach is they hand over price control to Amazon. And so when Vendor Central, you're selling your products to Amazon on a wholesale basis, Amazon takes that product in and they own it like a distributor or retailer would, and then they will price it any way they see fit to move the product from a retail perspective. And happen most often to be one of the top offenders as it relates to MAP compliance, price erosion, etc. So if you're not managing this across the board, you're going to have pricing problems with Vendor Central. On Seller Central, this is the third party way of selling. You're selling through Amazon. You set up your own store. Amazon never buys it. You sell through them. Amazon still processes the order. You can use things like FBA to ship the product, so it makes it Prime eligible. The issue is you set the price here on your selling product, so you avoid some of those challenges with regard to 1P. And we see many manufacturers moving in that direction largely for those reasons. There's also higher revenue and profitability here. And we've had cases like this fellow at Dynabrade said the Amazon 3P approach is a slam dunk because it's helped us communicate better with our distributors, deepen our relationships. Should have done it a long time ago. So this is another element of channel control I just wanted to briefly highlight as a way to, if you're not selling today on Amazon, selling on the 3P method can be a way to improve your chances of having channel control. But it doesn't mitigate everything else we talked about, right? You still need to do all these things outside of Amazon and marketplaces. And we wanted to give you, kind of an overview of the steps. Now, this is not, I'm not going to read all this for time's sake, but really, again, you can refer back to this kind of a typical time frame and how you might roll out a channel control program. Step one is really assessing where you are, and step two, they can kind of happen simultaneously to some degree, setting the foundation. It's all the channel control policies and procedures, getting your communication strategy in line, getting your systems in place, and processes and resources in place. Then once you have that foundation set, then it's really about your policy rollout, intensification, escalation, up to and including you're sending cease and desist letters, you're doing test buys, ongoing monitoring, and up to including doing taking legal action in some cases to set an example. Andrew, anything you want to add to this kind of roadmap here?
Yeah, right. I just wanted to add, this is a great visual. And I just want to call out one thing. Like, this is a process, and it's about using the right tool at the right step. And what you find is that you kind of go wider and then you get more and more specialized as you go up. And you always want to have an answer to what's next and why.
Hmm.
And as you get towards the top of the pyramid, you're using very specialized tools to accomplish a very specific goal with an outcome that you want.
Yep.
Your decisions. And I will say that you very rarely get to the legal action, but there's steps that do involve lawyers potentially, there's a cease and desist and such, that are kind of like at the tip of that pyramid and work extremely well after you've done other things. So this is
Right.
about a process of using the right tool, at the right time to get the outcome that you want. And this is a great overall view of kind of the process and time it takes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think part of this too is setting KPIs, and that's not explicitly called out in this chart. But to your point about having explicit goals, what are those goals? It was to Heather's question earlier, about why do you do this, right? And part of it can be maintaining and improving your price integrity in the market, and you can set KPIs around that. You can set KPIs around your overall, sell-throughs on these channels. In fact, what's counterintuitive, Andrew, what we've seen on Amazon, again, that's our world where we focus, is when companies take this approach effectively, it actually helps, even if they authorize other resellers and they have resellers selling along with them, it actually helps the overall sales on Amazon, even though you've gotten price integrity because you're cleaning up the channel, you're eliminating confusion, you're directing people to the right brand, you're eliminating inaccurate listings and consolidating listings and presenting your brand the right way. And so it has, to your earlier point, it has an effect of impacting all channels. So setting KPIs around those things, sales KPIs are certainly reasonable, price integrity, compliance, number of unknown resellers. These are some of the KPIs we've used. So good. So the value here is really multifold, right? One is gaining brand control, eliminating some of that misleading, incorrect product information, eliminating channel conflict by gaining control of the content and price, acquiring new customers. That's the other thing, as you're doing this and you're taking proactive control, you're also meeting the needs of these customers, these new customer cohorts. For example, many of our clients will use Amazon as a way to enter new markets, to whether those are geographic or to find different types of customers, such as smaller customers that their sales team doesn't service as well, those sorts of things. Also recapturing sales from competitors, from particularly companies, as Andrew, you mentioned, coming out of Asia, new brands. There's obviously significant revenue and profit potential. We've shown you the growth here, and it can accelerate growth in e-commerce in a scalable manner. These marketplaces, folks, provide a great way for you to build your e-commerce muscle, even for your own e-commerce. There's learnings here as you grow and expand your own e-commerce. So I want to share a quick case study. This is a joint client of Andrew and I. They're a leading plumbing manufacturer who's achieved 90% plus buy box win rate, uh, complete price integrity. They've taken control and eliminated hundreds and hundreds of resellers. It was a significant process, guys. And again, this is not something that happens overnight. If you're in a situation like they were, where they had close to 500 resellers, what did they do? Well, a number of things. Number one, on the Amazon channel, which was their biggest marketplace channel when we started, shifted from resellers in 1P to selling in 3P. They set the brand as the only authorized seller. They established distribution, internet map policies, all the things we've been talking about. They leveraged their guarantees and warranties. And again, Tom, we can talk after this about that in more detail. Thanks for that question. Merging ASINs, proactive monitoring. They use TrackStreet to identify who the heck these resellers are. And Andrew, you guys have a huge database, right, of these resellers. Oftentimes, you don't know who they are. Cease selling to offending distributors. They did, and to your question earlier, Amanda, they filed a lawsuit to set the example, and they actually didn't have to do that until about, I don't know, I think it's about like 15 months in. And they got most of the folks off of their listings to achieve the high buy box win. And it took a while, but they didn't have to file lawsuits to do it. And today they're generating over $23 million in Amazon direct sales. And that's just Amazon. We add in the other channels, it's going to be more than that. So very significant success story here. Andrew, anything you want to add on this one?
Yeah, right. So the area of Amazon essentially as a distributor, I think is really
Right.
interesting, right? Is like reinventing the concept of a master distributor. And this is an area that you live in terms of Amazon business and the
Yep.
controls you can surprisingly have actually on some of your channels if you're kind of leveraging that market. And I think for many brands, this is a quantum shift of like what does distribution look like and how it's changing. I think that's a really interesting point of thinking about Amazon a little bit differently, different segments of that business. So I think that's an area that certainly you live in. Um,
Right.
it's very powerful.
Absolutely. And of course, with the growth of Amazon business, which this year will be $80 billion, there's a lot of, concern about disruption in the business. But again, these fundamentals we're talking about here, if they're managed carefully, it doesn't have to be disruptive. It can be accretive and incremental to the business. So go
Frank,
ahead.
I add one thing,
Yeah, please.
not to derail us, but we've talked about essentially taming chaos. Right?
Right.
And we're in a world where AI is going to matter more and more and more. And
Yes.
AI is going to decide who gets recommended for what. You're looking for a new pair of skis. What are you going to buy? They're going to be much more active in that conversation, less of a rep, less of someone in a store.
Yep.
AI is going to know all sorts of things. But I'll tell you, what a lot we've been talking about is controlling chaos. And there's a term I like called the presentation layer, right? How is your brand presented across the ecosystem of internet? Price, resellers,
Yep.
content, all the things. If it's confusing to you, how you look and how you sound and how customers might review you and so on, how do you think it looks to AI?
Right. Yep.
So
Yep.
what we're really talking about is systematically standardizing and controlling the perception of you, the place where everybody's increasingly going to learn about what to buy and when. And
Yep.
so it's a kind of a simple way of pulling up and I think really where future is going of this concept. So
Yeah, that's
to be
great.
continued later.
No, that's great. So prepare future-proofing your business for AI is another big piece of this. So a couple quick takeaways. Channel conflict, stems from a lack of this channel control, and there's such huge incentives here for these resellers, and it's costly, as we've highlighted, right? So you really need three elements, breaking it down. You need a foundation, internal alignment. You need the right business approach, and you got to resource it well. And then you need these tools in place to to manage and do this effectively. And of course, the goal is to, future-proof your business. Success is attainable. It takes time. And in the U.S. market, by the way, is easier to do these things than it is in other markets around the world. So if many of you are U.S. based brands who are on the call today, so you have that advantage going for you. Wanted to do a couple in our last 2 minutes here, just a couple quick things. Remind you that our business Enceiba is available to help you with an assessment of your Amazon specific situation. That's what we focus on. Send me an email. Be happy to talk to you about that and look at your situation. Look at your criteria for authorization. Build a business case for you with you for taking control and resourcing this, and give you an action plan. And I know, Andrew, you had a couple things you wanted to share for the group as well.
Got two offers. But basically, what we know is data drives decisions, and we're talking especially about executive buy-in. Let's use numbers to have the right conversation. So for our customers on this call, fantastic. Love to give you a free analysis of marketplaces about revenue loss to competitors, how much inventory is being held and sold per product per seller on places like Amazon and eBay. It's really compelling data. Let's make the right decisions with the information. For those of you who don't know us, we would love to show you your ecosystem. How many retailers selling your products, who, where, and for how much on the marketplaces. And we're going to get into the revenue opportunity on these marketplaces for you so you can make the right decisions based upon data and get that executive buy-in.
Fantastic. Well, folks, here's our contact information. Thank you, everyone, for listening in on our webinar today. Hopefully, you found the information helpful. As I mentioned, it is recorded, and you will be able to access this afterwards. We'll send it out to everyone via email, so you can go back and take a look at it. If you have questions, Andrew and I, reach out to us. We'd love to address them. Thank you for your questions throughout the event. Andrew, it's been a lot of fun. Vin Diesel, always
Very
wanted to do a
great.
webinar with Vin Diesel. I'm excited I finally did it.
Thank you, Brian. A lot of fun.
All
Thank you,
right, man.
everybody.
We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everyone.